Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Between the Freight Lines. I'm Berkeley Brown, and I'm here joined by Gabe McGann today. How are you today?
Doing fine, Berkeley. Thank you.
So today we're going to go through some major developments around these IEEPA tariff refunds and what this process could look like for importers. Where we left off is on March 4th, the Court of International Trade made a key ruling that directed the CBP to process unliquidated entries without IEEPA duties and to reprocess entries that aren't final yet. This created the sense that refunds are coming, it's not hypothetical anymore, and they gave an actionable direction to the CBP. Following this, on March 6th, a closed-door conference was held between the CBP and CIT, and this focused on how refunds would actually work. The CBP introduced the idea that importers file through ACE. In a declaration released by Brandon Lord, an executive director at CBP, he stated that it's an unprecedented volume of refunds and that they needed a different process. And this is what we later will find out to be CAPE. In this declaration, he stated that this process should be ready in approximately 45 days from March 6th. And at this point, we are given very limited details on how this process will work. Gabe, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think would have been very possible for Customs to have issued these refunds themselves, seeing as they have all of the data and specific 99 codes that were used for IEEPA tariffs. The government also issues quite a few refund checks every year during tax season. But at the end of the day, this is what we have going for us, and we're going to walk through what we know, where the completion percentages are right now, and exactly what importers should be doing.
How do you feel about this 45-day timeline?
I think it's unlikely, and it likely will be a little bit longer and possibly even still appealed by the government in an effort to either slow down the refunds or potentially not give them back.
Interesting point. Do you want to go into how this CAPE system is going to work?
Sure. Go through what we know right now. Like you said, the CBP suggested this as a process for importers to quote-unquote claw back refunds related to IEEPA tariffs. What they told us following that closed-door conference the next week, we learned a little bit more, and it's, of course, called CAPE, which stands for Consolidated Administration and Processing of Entries. What they told us that there would be 4 integrated components. First, the claim portal. Second, mass processing. Third, review and liquidation, reliquidation, and finally, the refund process. These components basically reflect how CBP anticipates issuing these refunds to each importer. We did find out that the CAPE system will be embedded into importers and brokers' ACE portal at some time here in the near future. So that way they will be able to upload declarations themselves before it goes into the CAPE processing system. If we want to just walk through each of these steps and what we know, we'll start with the claim portal. That's going to be a web-based and be in the ACE portal, as I said, and likely you'll be filing some sort of declaration which will contain a CSV file. We don't know the exact format, but there will be a specific format provided by CBP for importers to update a list of their entries. My hope personally is that it's going to be very basic and you're really just going to have to list entry numbers. Anything outside of that, I think, could get kind of complicated and probably result in a lot of rejects on the front end of this CAPE system. So we'll go through the claim portal is going to have a file validation and then an entry validation. The file validation will ensure that the refund request contains all the information. Again, we don't know exactly what that is, but that it's properly formatted and the submitter is either the importer of record or an authorized broker on behalf of the importer of record. If the submission fails any part of the file validation, ACE will reject the declaration. It will identify the specific errors that trigger the rejection and send it back to the filer, who will be able to view and also resubmit. This won't be, you can't get your refunds now. They'll just give you the option to resubmit. If it does go through, then it will go to the entry validation period. And during the entry validation period, the system is going to confirm that each entry listed in the CSV file has at least one IEEPA harmonized Schedule 99 number that was declared on that entry. That basically tells customs exactly what the 99 number was that the broker applied to trigger a specific IEEPA refund, or I'm sorry, an IEEPA tariff that was either maybe country specific or potentially for the Russian oil or the Brazil government, on down the road. If an entry summary fails in this process, it will be entry specific. And ACE is going to remove that specific entry summary from the declaration, but will continue processing the remaining entries. You will get a list of rejected entries that will allow the filer to review and identify any issues of why it rejected. If you're able to correct that entry, you can, and then you also can add that entry on a separate CAPE declaration in the future. So you won't lose any of these during this process. It's just simply going to identify that the list that you put through there meets all of the requirements to head on to the next step. The second step is going to be the mass processing step. And this, I believe, will be where customs is going to have the highest error rate when doing testing and probably take the longest in their programming. Just a personal opinion. But the CAPE mass processing component will automatically remove any applicable IEEPA HTS numbers from the entry summary submitted and validated by the CAPE claim portal. After the IEEPA HTS numbers are removed, the mass processing component runs the ACE duty calculation validation. These checks are a normal ACE entry summary process that exists today, which automatically reviews all declared HTS numbers to confirm the correct duties owed are listed on the entry summary. The mass processing component will calculate the duties as if the IEEPA duties had never been declared. After the CAPE declaration has passed through the mass processing component, the system now accepts the CAPE declaration that the importer or broker has filed. So kind of a lot going on there. And they do know that there is current programming that does similar tasks. So perhaps this won't be as hard as it seems, but you are adjusting an entry summary, which is not that usual for customs to be processing that part of it. The third step is going to be the review and liquidation and reliquidation. So once this is all gone through the mass processing, the CAPE component will initiate the review of liquidation and reliquidation for the entries identified and accepted CAPE declaration. So just to clarify, a liquidation would be any entry that has not liquidated. Typically, a liquidation happens approximately 314 days from final release. If something is looked at by customs for a post-summary correction, it might be liquidated earlier. They tend to, if they have the entry to review, they review it, they accept it, they tend to go ahead and issue liquidation. But traditionally, it's about 314 days after release. So anything that is not liquidated this will set up to actually liquidate. Anything that has liquidated and is within the appropriate period, which right now is typically 90 days, customs has the ability to reliquidate. You have 180 days to protest an entry, which we are currently still doing to protest liquidation to kind of stop the clock. So one of the things we are still waiting on is how the timeline looks for those that might be outside of that 90 days after liquidation, leading up to the 180 days that you're able to protest, and even ones that have already passed that protest period, which, in theory, customs shouldn't have liquidated in the first place when there was a court case against IEEPA tariffs. So back to the CAPE process and the review and liquidation, reliquidation. The component will automatically set these to liquidate or reliquidate on a specified number of days from the acceptance date. This will allow CBP to conduct a manual review as needed. They are developing additional functionality within the CAPE component to streamline any required agency reviews. The liquidation reliquidation component will update the underlying entry summaries to reflect the new total duties paid and will automatically calculate the interest that will be owed back to the importers on top of the IEEPA tariffs paid. It will also process the liquidation and reliquidation of entries on a CAPE declaration Monday through Thursday each week, they stated. Finally, will be the refund process. So when the entry summaries in the CAPE declaration reach the scheduled liquidation or reliquidation date, again, that's going to be set by CBP. It's not going to be an automatic date. That's giving them time to review. ACE will direct those entries to a refund process within the ACE Collections Refunds module. The CAPE refund component will consolidate refunds by date and importer of record or party to the importer of record, i.e. a Customs Form 4811 designating a customs broker or someone else to receive these refunds. And once processed, the refunds will be sent electronically to the designated bank account or the ACH refund account that we've been talking about previously. So those are currently the 4 stages. Only one stage actually requires intervention by an importer or a customs broker, and that is the first stage. Once we have the formatting capabilities and what we know to be needed by the CAPE system, we'll be getting that out to all of our clients as well.
And how far along is this process as it comes to overall completion?
Well, there's different phases. So each of the 4 are staggered on a different completion percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they range from about 45% to, I believe, 80%, depending on which phase we're looking at.
And quick question. So if an entry-specific refund's rejected, do you have to resubmit everything?
No, if it's an entry specific one, you'll get the information on the specific entry that rejected and give yourself a chance to review. So if, by chance you just mistakenly added an entry that had a 232 tariff that's still ongoing, you wouldn't resubmit that. If you did have an entry that had an IEEPA tariff and it for some reason rejected, we would have to investigate that between the importer and the broker to determine what the next steps are and why customs would have rejected it.
And then just to reiterate, this process is still in the works. It's not live yet. So there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, a lot of questions, but at least it gives us a target. That's the good news for a lot of importers. And I know many are anxious to get the refunds, but I will say this again, it is going to be a process. It is going to take some time. We have no idea, even if you're the first person to file a declaration in the CAPE system, how long that's going to actually take to process, how long that will actually take to get refunded. And a lot of that's going to be based on how much of a window do they give themselves to look at these liquidations and reliquidation dates. As you stated, that they said it's an unprecedented amount of entries. Well, it's going to be an unprecedented amount of requests at the same time. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I think not every importer is going to request their refunds back either unknowingly or just not getting the correct information. This maybe is part of why Customs is doing this way, just to make sure that, they're not going to give any money back that's not requested. It's going to be really interesting to see how this works because we're told right now that less than 10% of importers actually even have an ACE portal set up. And this is probably the best time to mention it again is please set up ACE portals. It is necessary to request your refunds. It's necessary to set up your ACH refund accounts, which is the only way Customs is going to send these refunds back. No longer are they going to be issuing checks, which is very smart of them because there was a lot of fraud involved with the last set of refunds when, kind of the 301s went into play in the first administration and then there was exclusions after the fact. It got very messy. People were realizing this, stealing checks, redoing the names on the checks. There was a lot of fraud involved. So this is a much safer way, but I would say that a very small percentage of importers actually have their ACH refund set up today.
So along with this ACH refund account, is there anything else that you think importers need to be looking out for right now?
I think right now the best practice is to identify the entries that had IEEPA tariffs, where that liquidation status stands. We're helping importers every single day, but my biggest advice would be to go through your ACE portal to run these reports. It's imperative that you look at every single entry. For example, if Rogers and Brown handled the majority of your entries, we're going to have all of that information. But if another broker happened to clear a shipment that had IEEPA tariffs, either knowingly or unknowingly, you're only going to be able to see that in your ACE portal. We aren't able to see something somebody else did for our clients. So it's important for them to track that themselves. We are working on some reports. Our software is working on an IEEPA specific report that should be available very soon, which we will be able to run for our clients. This will make it a bit easier because right now, any reports, either in the ACE portal or through our system, contain all tariff numbers. And as we know, a lot of the tariff numbers are actually still in play. The 232s, the 301s, and the new 122s that replace the IEEPA are all still active today, and no refunds are eligible for those.
I also just want to go ahead and plug our trade alerts and FAQ page. They're great ways to stay up to date with everything changing. We do try to keep that updated and get information out as we receive it. Other than that, is there anything else you want to add about this whole process? And
No, not a lot. I mean, I think we're going to continue to keep people updated as more information comes out. And just in case you're following it yourself, we tend to get updates every Thursday afternoon from the CIT. They directed the CBP to give them updates on a weekly basis. Sometimes I think it could be a little bit longer than weekly, but so far it has been issued every Thursday afternoon is when we tend to get updates. But the last one was really just more on the percentage of completion for each process.
thank you for listening to today's episode of Between the Freight Lines, a podcast produced here at Rogers & Brown. If you have any feedback or recommendations for future episodes, please feel free to reach out. Thank you. We'll talk to you all next time.
This podcast is for general information only and is not legal advice.